A gate agent told a Medal of Honor recipient his medal was worthless, denying him a flight to a hero's funeral. She didn't know his next phone call would be to the Pentagon, shutting the entire airport down. The sterile, impersonal chaos of Denver International Airport swirled around Colonel Robert "Bobby" Nash, but he remained an island of calm. At 52, he stood with the quiet, unshakable posture of a man who had navigated situations far more volatile than a crowded airport terminal. His Army service uniform, the formal dress blues, was immaculate. Each ribbon on his chest was a chapter of his life, a life spent in places most Americans only saw on the news. But it was the simple, light blue ribbon dotted with white stars that he wore around his neck that made people pause. The Medal of Honor, hanging just below his tie, caught the harsh fluorescent light, a silent, heavy testament to a single day of impossible courage. He was traveling to Arlington National Cemetery for the funeral of his former platoon sergeant, Marcus Williams. The ceremony was at 0800 the next morning. This was the last flight that would get him there on time. A promise had been made. The weight of that promise felt heavier than any rucksack he'd ever carried. It wasn't just about attending a funeral, it was about bearing witness to the end of a story that had been forged in the crucible of war. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the scent of jet fuel was replaced by the acrid smell of smoke and dust in Fallujah, 2006. The memory was seared into his soul. The crackle of the radio, the sudden, deafening roar of the machine gun nest that had opened up on them, pinning down his platoon in a dusty, sun-baked alley. 3 men were gone in the first 30 seconds. Panic, hot and metallic, had threatened to consume them all. But then training, discipline, and a desperate love for his men had taken over. He had made 7 trips across that open, death-strewn ground, dragging his wounded soldiers back to the relative safety of a bombed-out building. On the 6th run, as he was pulling a young private whose leg had been shredded by shrapnel, the machine gun had swiveled towards him. He had seen the muzzle flashes, had braced for the impact. But the bullets never came. Instead, he'd heard the steady, defiant bark of Sergeant Marcus Williams' M4 rifle from a nearby window, drawing the enemy's fire. Marcus had given him the seconds he needed. Those seconds had cost Marcus dearly, leaving him with injuries that would plague him for the rest of his life. Now, that life was over, lost not to an enemy bullet, but to the long, slow war he fought with his own mind and body back home. Bobby owed him this final goodbye. He owed him everything. He opened his eyes and walked towards gate 47. At the counter stood Jennifer Walsh. At 26, she had worked for Skyward Airlines for 3 years, a tenure that had sanded away any initial enthusiasm, leaving behind a jaded, cynical core. To her, the endless river of travelers was a series of problems to be managed. Her power was small, confined to the space behind her counter, but it was absolute. She wielded company policy like a shield and a sword, finding a grim satisfaction in its unyielding logic. She saw Colonel Nash approaching, saw the uniform and the chest full of ribbons, and her internal defenses went up. Another one, she thought, expecting a handout because of a uniform. She was determined to show him that here, in her kingdom, his rank meant nothing. "Good afternoon," Colonel Nash said, his voice calm and steady as he placed his boarding pass and military ID on the counter. "Checking in for Flight 1847 to Washington." Jennifer gave the documents a cursory glance, her eyes lingering for a fraction of a second on the Medal of Honor before a flicker of disdain crossed her face. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside," she announced, her tone loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Your reservation has been flagged." Bobby's brow furrowed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Flagged? Ma'am, I have a confirmed first-class seat. Is there a problem with my documentation?" "The problem, sir," Jennifer said, tapping her keyboard with theatrical importance, "is with the payment. It appears you've used a military discount that doesn't cover the full fare for a first-class ticket. You'll need to pay the difference, or I can reassign you to a seat in coach." The statement was utterly false. Bobby had paid the full price, precisely to avoid any such complications. He understood she had made a mistake. Ma'am, with all due respect, I believe you're mistaken. I paid the full first-class fare for this ticket 3 weeks ago. There was no military discount applied. Jennifer's voice took on a saccharine, condescending tone. Sir, I understand you think you paid the full fare, but our system says otherwise. We have a very clear policy. We don't provide automatic upgrades for military personnel, regardless of their decorations. She waved a dismissive hand in the direction of his chest. A small crowd was now gathering, phones quietly emerging to record the unfolding drama. Bobby was acutely aware of them, but his focus remained on Jennifer. He was not a man who sought confrontation, but he was also not a man who backed down from a matter of principle. I am not requesting an upgrade, he explained again, his voice dropping lower, forcing her to lean in to hear him. I purchased this seat. I have the receipt on my phone to prove it. She didn't ask to see it. The truth was irrelevant to her. She had already decided he was in the wrong, that he was another entitled soldier trying to leverage his service for special treatment. Her narrative was set. Sir, if you have a billing dispute, you'll have to take it up with customer service, she said, her voice dripping with finality. As it stands, I can offer you seat 34B in coach. Otherwise, you'll have to find another flight. She looked him dead in the eye and delivered the final, crushing blow. I'm sorry, sir, but metals don't buy first-class seats. Behind her, through the large terminal window, the jet bridge began to pull away. A hydraulic hiss signaled the closing of the gate door. Flight 1847, with an empty first-class seat that bore his name, was pushing back, beginning its journey to Washington without him. Bobby watched it go, a familiar tightness clenching his chest. It was the same feeling he'd had in that alley in Fallujah, the helpless, gut-wrenching feeling of a plan falling apart, of good men paying the price for the mistakes and arrogance of others. He thought of Marcus, lying in a flag-draped casket, waiting for him. He had survived IEDs and sniper fire, only to be defeated by the bureaucratic indifference of a 26-year-old gate agent. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus's widow. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, Colonel. Marcus always said you'd move heaven and earth for your men. He stared at the words, the screen blurring. He was about to fail her. He was about to fail Marcus. All because someone decided his honor wasn't worth a seat on an airplane. The noise of the terminal faded into a dull roar in Bobby's ears. The next available flight wouldn't land until well after the funeral had concluded. Missing it was not an inconvenience, it was a betrayal. It was a failure to uphold the most sacred vow a leader makes to his soldiers, to see them home, no matter what. He took a deep breath, the disciplined calm returning. He had solved problems under far greater pressure. He approached Jennifer's counter one last time. Ma'am, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. I need to speak with your supervisor. Immediately. Jennifer didn't even look up from her screen. Sir, I've explained the policy. The supervisor will tell you the exact same thing. Now if you'll please step aside. No, Bobby said. It was a single word, spoken without anger, but it carried the weight of a command that had once moved entire battalions. Jennifer finally looked up, her irritation palpable. Sir, I am the authority at this gate. If you don't like our policies, you are free to fly with another airline. The challenge hung in the air between them. Bobby looked at her, at the smug satisfaction on her face, and made a decision. He had followed the chain of command. He had presented evidence. He had been met with lies and disrespect. Some situations required a different kind of protocol. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and stopped at a name he hadn't called in 2 years. It was a number that didn't connect to a call center, but to one of the most secure rooms in the nation. The phone rang twice. Hawkins, a crisp, no-nonsense voice answered. General Hawkins, it's Bobby Nash. General Patricia Hawkins, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, recognized his voice instantly. Bobby. What's your situation? "Ma'am, I'm stranded at Denver International. An airline employee has denied me boarding on a flight to Washington. I'm going to miss Sergeant Williams' funeral." The line went silent for 3 full seconds. General Hawkins had been Bobby's battalion commander in Iraq. She had been there when he earned the medal. And she had personally pinned a Purple Heart on Marcus Williams' chest as he lay in a field hospital. "Colonel Nash," her voice was now dangerously cold. "Are you telling me that a gate agent for Skyward Airlines is preventing a Medal of Honor recipient from attending the funeral of one of his fallen soldiers?" "Yes, ma'am. She claims my ticket is invalid, and that my medal doesn't qualify me for the seat I paid for." "Stand by, Colonel," General Hawkins said, her voice resonating with absolute authority. "This situation is about to be rectified." The line went dead. Bobby put his phone away and stood by the window, waiting. He saw Jennifer watching him, a flicker of uncertainty now replacing her smug confidence. She had seen the name on his phone screen. General Hawkins. 8 minutes passed. To the other passengers, it was just another delay. But to those who had served, there was a palpable tension in the air, the electric calm that precedes a storm. At precisely 4:03 p.m., the orchestrated chaos of the airport came to a screeching halt. Every single departure screen in the massive terminal, from Concourse A to Concourse C, flickered and then simultaneously displayed the same message in stark, red letters: "All aircraft movement suspended by federal order. Remain in terminal until further notice." A wave of confused murmurs swept through the airport. At Gate 47, Jennifer Walsh's terminal chimed with a high-priority alert. Her face went from pink to a ghostly white as she read the message from corporate headquarters. It was a direct order to cooperate with federal authorities regarding an incident at her gate. She looked up at Colonel Nash, her eyes wide with the dawning horror of her miscalculation. Through the vast terminal windows, the scene on the tarmac was even more surreal. A convoy of black SUVs with government plates and flashing lights was racing across the runways, converging on their gate. Air traffic controllers' voices crackled over radios, a frantic symphony of confusion as a no-fly zone was established over the entire airport. Jennifer's supervisor appeared, running faster than anyone had ever seen her move, her face a mask of panic. Flanking her were 2 men in dark, impeccably tailored suits. They flashed their credentials to Airport Security, Department of Homeland Security. The power dynamic at Gate 47 had not just shifted, it had been annihilated. The 2 federal agents approached Jennifer's counter with methodical calm. Ms. Walsh, the lead agent, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, said, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight. "I'm Agent Martinez. We need to have a conversation about your interaction with Colonel Nash." Jennifer's well-rehearsed defense of company policy crumbled into a stream of incoherent stammers under Agent Martinez's pointed questions. When the agents produced a printed copy of Colonel Nash's original, full fare reservation, which they had received directly from the Pentagon, her fabricated story of a billing discrepancy evaporated completely. She was exposed. Within 20 minutes, the regional manager for Skyward Airlines arrived, having been dispatched from his downtown office with one simple directive: fix this, now. He approached Colonel Nash, his face beaded with sweat. "Colonel," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Please, on behalf of our entire airline, accept our most profound and sincere apologies for this unacceptable and disgraceful treatment. We are immediately reinstating your seat," the manager continued, speaking rapidly. "And we would like to offer you complimentary first-class travel, for life, as a small token of our deep regret for this incident." Bobby's response was not what the manager expected. "Sir," he said, his voice calm and firm. "I don't want free flights. I want your assurance that you will implement immediate policy changes and mandatory training, so that no other service member, of any rank, ever has to face this kind of disrespect while traveling to honor one of their fallen comrades." "Absolutely, Colonel. Consider it done," the manager said, nodding vigorously, already envisioning the press release. 30 minutes later, Jennifer Walsh was clearing out her desk, her airline career terminated by the 6 words that had revealed her character to the world. The videos of the incident had already amassed millions of views, turning her into a national symbol of corporate disrespect for military service. Under federal escort, Flight 1847, the very plane that had left him behind, returned to Gate 47. As Colonel Nash walked down the jet bridge, he was met with a spontaneous round of applause from the other passengers, who had witnessed the entire saga. He took his rightful seat, the empty first-class seat that was now occupied by someone who had earned it not through privilege, but through service. The next morning, under a clear Virginia sky, Colonel Bobby Nash stood at attention in Arlington National Cemetery. The sharp cracks of the rifle salute echoed across the hallowed grounds as an honor guard meticulously folded the American flag that had draped Marcus Williams's casket. After the ceremony, Marcus's widow approached him, her eyes filled with tears but her voice steady. "Colonel Nash," she said, gripping his arm. "Marcus always said you'd move heaven and earth for your soldiers. Yesterday proved he was right." Bobby accepted the folded flag from Marcus's young son, the triangular weight of it a familiar burden. He knew then that some battles never truly end. The fight for respect, for dignity, and for the simple acknowledgement of sacrifice, was a war that required constant vigilance, long after one had left the battlefield. Honor wasn't about the medals you wore, it was about the promises you kept. This story serves as a powerful reminder that true honor is not found in a medal or a uniform, but in quiet dignity and kept promises. The gap between supporting our troops with words and showing them respect through our actions is where character is truly tested. The gate agent saw only an old man in a uniform. She failed to see the history, sacrifice, and unbreakable integrity he represented. True strength isn't about the authority you can wield over someone, but the respect you choose to give freely, especially to those you think have no power to challenge you. It reminds us all to look beyond appearances and recognize the potential hero standing right in front of us, whose story we do not yet know. Have you ever witnessed a moment where quiet dignity triumphed over loud arrogance? Share your experience in the comments below, and let's create a space that celebrates true honor. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more.